Horror-tober in the after-movie diner. Every year we do one and this year is just the same. We've got scary people and they're talking on the show. We're watching horror movies, you know exactly how this goes. Ha ha! It's Horror-tober in the after-movie diner. Won't you listen to us, please? And if you like what you hear, rate and review us on iTunes. Ha! Oh, I love Horror-tober. It's my favorite part of the year. Hello, yes, and welcome to yet another Horror-tober episode of the After Movie Diner. And my goodness, what an episode we have for you this week. It was an incredible pleasure and privilege to speak to none other than Scream Queen extraordinaire, incredibly talented actress, a bloody nice person, and Ms.Vampy herself, Brooke Lewis, this week. Yes, we have an exclusive interview with her coming up, which is absolutely fantastic. I hope all genre fans enjoy that. I'd also like to say a big thanks to everyone who gave us great feedback on the Brian Trenchard Smith episode last week, including the fantastic Matt Beckett, who sent in this awesome voicemail, which I'm going to play for you now.
Hello, John. Matt Beckett here. Just dropping you a line to offer my thanks for another fantastic slate of episodes and interviews from the After Movie Diner. I'd like to offer particular thanks for your most recent edition with the always genial Brian Trenchard Smith. Every minute was an absolute delight. His breadth of experience, his versatility, and above all his playfulness and honesty made him 2 hours of the most engaging company. From his regular appearances on Trailers from Hell, Mr. Trenchard Smith has certainly sold me on several films that I had scant knowledge of, using the kind of erudite and humorous approach that you spotted were a constant throughout his movies. And what a way to end the diner in many recent episodes. The songs that you wrote for this week, and especially the Lucio Fulci episode, were certainly keepers. And with your annual Horror-tober now in season, your lyrics, "He talked about horror, he talked about love," have prompted me to make a brief recommendation. Della morte dell'amore, a phrase which means of death and of love, is a fantastic feature from the Italian cinema of Michele Soavi. Better known in the UK as Cemetery Man, it offers a one-of-a-kind performance from Rupert Everett, the most extraordinarily autumnal production design, and a wonderful parade of ever more grotesque situations for Mr. Everett to find himself in. And it has such a sense of atmosphere, as the best of Italian cinema so often does. As the situations get more outlandish, the atmosphere becomes ever more dreamlike. It's a film so rich that it certainly repays an annual visit. So many thanks again for all your recent episodes. The most ardent film fan would have to search very long and hard to find another interviewee to reach anywhere near the qualities of Brian Trenchard Smith. However, knowing your track record, John, I'm sure you'll keep trying to do just that.
Well, thank you very much, Matt Beckett. That's a fantastic voicemail. And for all those people wanting to know how you can send in a voicemail, you can do it one of two ways. You can either go to www.speakpipe.com/After Movie Diner, which is what Matt did, or you can call us on 347-669-0053 and leave us a voicemail there. That would be absolutely fantastic. To just cover a couple of things that he brought up in the voicemail, I have seen Della Morte Dell'Amore, and in fact I was thinking of giving it another watch this year, as it has been some years since I saw it. I also recently wrote a review for the Blue Underground Blu-ray of Michel Soavi's first film, the Giallo slasher, call it what you will, Stage Fright, for DiaboliqueMagazine.com. And you can find that under the DVD and Blu-ray reviews over at DiaboliqueMagazine.com. But you can also find my reviews of that and other horror and Blue Underground Blu-ray releases, along with other films, over at AfterMovieDiner.com. Blue Underground have been very generous and kind to add me to their press list, and so you can find my reviews of the aforementioned Stage Fright, but also Rats, Night of Terror, and Hell of the Living Dead, and the soon-to-be-released Compañeros, which is an absolutely fantastic spaghetti western by Sergio Corbucci. Diabolique, the premier horror genre magazine, is jam-packed with exclusive photos and interviews, insightful commentary, criticism, reviews, featured articles from acclaimed horror writers, and much more in full color. Every 2 months you are presented with an indispensable and lavishly illustrated collector's magazine made by and for the enthusiastic horror genre fan. Also, visit diaboliquemagazine.com and get VIP access to all of the biggest names in the horror industry. Diabolique brings you the first look and the last word, including fresh analysis to subjects old and new, foreign and domestic, from ancient folklore and gothic classics to contemporary horror film releases and modern literary gems. Also explore diaboliquemagazine.com to start a subscription to the magazine today for exclusive online content, podcasts, and so much more. Yes, I'm now writing for Diabolique Magazine Online. I'm also hoping to set up some sort of horror podcast over there as well, so please watch this space. In the meantime, please don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes or Stitcher or Spreaker or YouTube or wherever you find the podcast. And also, please go ahead and become a patron of the After Movie Diner over at www.patreon.com/After Movie Diner. That's patreon.com/After Movie Diner. And for as little as just $1 an episode, or 70p if you're in the UK, thanks to the wonderful exchange rate at the moment, you can show your support and love for the diner and myself and keep the show going, which would be absolutely fantastic. So that's over at www.patreon.com/After Movie Diner. And if you're listening to this on the day of release, if you pledge any amount, even just $1 a show before October 24th, then you will get a personalized song written and performed by me, a fully produced song for yourself on any topic you like, or about yourself, or about your favorite movie, or whatever it is. I will do a song for you. I've already done one for Mark Burns and Eric Foster. I've got songs coming up for Philip O'Neill and Jason Roth. So thanks everyone who's already donated. Thanks everyone who already sponsors the show. You know who you are, and you know that you're brilliant. Please do join them. It really is imperative to keep the show going. If my listeners go over to patreon.com/After Movie Diner and show us some love. All right? And with that...
This is the Ladies of the Evil Dead, and you're listening to the After Movie Diner. Shut up.
All right, it is my distinct pleasure and what an honor to welcome onto the After Movie Diner this Horrortober episode, the fantastic Scream Queen, Brooke Lewis, onto the show, who is, I think, the first guest that I've ever had on the show who's actually asked me to come on the show, which just gave me an enormous head and made me feel amazing. So, Brooke, thanks ever so much for being here, love. It's absolutely wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, and it was so wonderful because we can tell the listeners. I mean, we've been corresponding on Twitter for a while, and yes. I'm a fan, and I'm a fan because I love that you do cover all genres, and I love your format, and I was like, wait a minute. How come we talk all the time on Twitter and I've never been invited? Everyone invites me on their shows.
Well, the thing is that the guys over at the basement had you on a few times, and I'd heard you on their show, and thought it was fantastic. And I was thinking, well, I've got to somehow figure out how to get on the show and find a sort of film or a couple of films that I could hook an episode onto. And I was definitely thinking that this Horrortober I would contact you, and before I could, you actually, and that's not me just saying that, I was thinking, well, who am I going to have on this October? What are we going to do? And then I was thinking, well, I need a Scream Queen, obviously. And I was thinking, well, I could ask Brooke. And then you came to me. Yes.
See, it's my special powers, John. And we do need to shout out for sure to Jason and Sean. Yes. Because, I mean, I kind of am, like, after many, many years, like, their mascot. I mean, I am their Scream Queen mascot. We have to give them that.
Definitely. And that was the other thing, is I didn't want to necessarily either make you...
You stole me.
Yeah, I didn't want to... Yes, she's mine now, Jason and Sean. Leave her alone.
Yes, guys, I've been lured away with the special powers.
Indeed, of the After Movie Diner. No, those guys up in Canada, absolutely amazing, really lovely guys. And they came on board, my friend Mo Porn and I, were doing various podcasts. He was doing Drunk on VHS, I was doing The Diner, and we sort of thought about putting together this unofficial group. And although we never did anything particularly as a group, we set up the Second Unit Podcast Network. And Jason and Sean were like the next show to come on. And although their show at the time was the biggest show that was at the network, and I mean certainly still is, they were so just uniformly lovely, uniformly brilliant, very open, very chatty, and did anything for the network, and we did anything for them. So there was never a sense from them that they were this, big radio show in Canada and they were doing their thing, which was always my perspective of them. They have these great guests and things like that. And I always kind of looked up to them, but there they were just treating us as, friends and equals and everything else. And we've been that way ever since. And it's fantastic.
They are just, I love them. They're like my Canadian family. Like I feel like I've gained, family members over many, many years in
Definitely.
This industry, and it's such a crazy industry. And, I am so grateful for all of you guys that support my career. And they've just been so supportive of me. I'm supportive of them. And they are, what I've always loved about them is they're so down to earth. They're so real deal, like you said. And you got to give props to people who remain humble and genuine throughout this crazy industry.
Oh yeah, anyone without pretension, and I'm there. I'm your friend for life. I mean, I remember I've had, and I'm not name dropping, but we've had people like William Sadler on the show, and had Barbara Crampton on the show, and things like that. And them too, they are like your friend. You know what I mean? They're just really good, decent people. They still tweet me from time to time, and there's no. There was no lauding their fame over me or anything like that. They were just genuinely nice, decent people. And in fact, I've been very, very lucky. And in fact, I've not heard a lot of podcasters have problems with guests that they've had on in terms of, them demanding special treatment or them demanding only certain questions be asked or whatever. Everyone I've talked to.
Oh, wait a minute. Didn't my publicist tell you? I mean, I have a list of demands. Don't you know I'm like the horror diva?
I was going to ask, Brooke, what's your rider? Do you have a specific rider?
You know. Don't think I'm easy.
We're in the green room. We have to have certain candy in a certain shaped bowl or something like that.
And a certain color. Yes.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Well, no. So it's an absolute pleasure, and it's a pleasure as always. To delve into new films and new web series and things like that. And I've been all about Brooke Lewis for the last week.
I like you being all about Brooke Lewis.
I know it's been an absolute thrill and a pleasure, and I'm going to continue on. There's so much you've done and so much I want to talk about. We were just talking before we started recording that the two films I've seen in preparation for this show was iMurders and Kinky Killers. Mm-hmm. And I watched a lot of your Ms.Vampy web series.
Great.
And the Sprinkles short that you sent me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be the main area of our conversation, but also, obviously, little bits here and there, bring up whatever you like. I want you to be able to promote whatever you want, talk about whatever you want, and point out, what you feel is your best performances and best films and things like that. That's so that people can then delve into your work and find it out for themselves. That's always the fun of these things. But first of all, Brooke, where does it come from for you? Where does the acting bug or the horror bug, either one, where does that come from for you?
That's a great question, and they're two very, very separate answers. I believe we each have a path in life and a destiny. I really do. And I believe that, some people get inspired or moved by something when they're very, very young. And then others, look, I have friends who are older who still say to me, God, you're so lucky that you knew exactly what you wanted to do and what your path was as a little girl. And I truly did. I was singing and dancing and performing. And, it really came actually from being a very shy child and a very insecure child.
Yeah.
So in private, I would dress up and I would perform and I would play records and I would dance around. And it was always a great form of expression for me because I was too shy and too scared to do that in front of an audience or in front of people. And as I got a little bit older and my mom put me into drama classes and all that good stuff, it was just such a great form of expression for me. So I really believe that I was born, I hate to say that because it sounds so cliche, but I was born to be an actress. I was born to do this. And I also think life happens, and I've had a lot of ups and downs and challenges in my life, personally and professionally. And so I think that, actors are people who feel very strongly, who are hypersensitive most of the time, who are they're very I think a lot of actors are empathic. I know I am. And so that's really, I feel like I just have known forever. I loved it. I've been doing stage since I was a teenage girl, and just decided to, continue down the path. And, there were ebbs and flows and times where I was like, okay, maybe I should listen to everybody. And, because I was such a great student and really intelligent, and everyone said, go to law school. And I got into law school, and, and things changed, but I always followed my truth, and I still commit to that every day in life and in work. And it seems to work out, so I know I was meant to do what I'm doing. And as far as the horror, that's such a crazy twist, because I was a horror fan. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I was an 80s girl who loved, who would, as soon as we got the VHS or VCR or whatever, I'm dating myself, but, we would.
Oh, no, I was right there with you. I know what you're talking about.
We would have these horror movie marathons, my girlfriends and I, and it was the greatest thing ever. That would be like our Friday night. And so I loved it, and just was a fan, and was obsessed with vampires my whole life. And never in a million years, my path went from graduating college, moving straight to New York, landing Tony and Tina's Wedding off Broadway, which is a mobster comedy, which is something I also, love and fulfills me like crazy. And I have a very long career of doing mobster movies and comedy. And from that, and why I mention it is, you would never in a million years have thought years ago out of college that this would be my destiny. But it kind of, again, took these twists and turns. I paid attention. I moved to Los Angeles, with a decent reel of having done edgy indie films in New York, had friends working in horror. They were always saying, oh, if you ever want to be in one of my movies. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm a fan, not a horror actress. And lo and behold, it really, without getting into too long of a story, it really happened when I went to Sundance Film Festival 2004, so 10 years ago. And I paid attention. And I had produced I had taken producing classes. I had produced a couple short films. We won awards. And I started learning the ropes, because I went from being a consistently working actress for 4 years in New York, right out of college, being signed with one of the top agencies, to moving to LA, and I couldn't get arrested.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, well, that's great that you've done Broadway and all these indie films, and mobster movies, who cares? Like, if you don't have tons of television credits in LA, you're in trouble.
Right.
So I'm like, what do I do? And after Sundance, that was when the very first Saw came out, James Wan. And I paid attention, and I said, wow, these guys are onto something. There's a new form of that psychological horror torture thriller in town. Let me investigate this. I had worked as an actress with this production company back in New York quite often when I lived there, and they wanted to produce something together and wanted me to be the LA liaison. And lo and behold, I suggested, okay, here's the deal. I'll do this. I am willing to do this because I'm at wit's end with my career here in Hollywood. I can't, it's really challenging for me now. I went from being a consistently working actress and making great money to like struggling. And I said, I will do a feature with you guys if you write me like a psychological torture horror thriller. Go see Saw when it comes out, and let's do something of that nature. And they said, no problem. Write me the female lead, and we'll put the other female lead. I'll be the brunette. We'll put a gorgeous blonde. We'll surround us with named actors. And let's do this. And you had mentioned the title, which originally was Polycarp, which was a biblical reference because it's about the book of Revelation and a serial killer, right? And so that was the initial concept. And I said, I'm down. They wrote it. It took 3 years to develop that film and raise the financing. And another partner, Mark Velasco, and I, who was here with me, we did that together. And it came to pass. And lo and behold, again, who in a million years would have thunk it? But I went from being a fan to Showtime picking up this film, airing it 3 nights a week for 2 years straight. And like literally my managers called me at the time, my talent managers, and said, Brooke, we need you to come to the office. We have to talk to you. And as we had talked about, John, off air before, here I was starring in a film shot on 35 with Oscar-nominated Charles Durning, the amazing and talented Michael Pare, who I had a crush on when I was a little girl in Eddie and the Cruisers.
Sure,
and
of course.
Eric Edibari, right? Yeah, remember that? A cult classic.
Yeah.
Eric Edibari from Lincoln Lawyer and Witchblade, and who was a dear friend of mine, and all these great actors. Brandon Flagle, who's a horror actor too, and it was titled Polycarp. And when Universal and Showtime picked us up, they changed the title to Kinky Killers.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, okay, I'm done. My career's done. I went from nothing to now nothinger. And I go to my manager's office, and they said, I thought they were going to fire me and let me go as a client. And next thing you know, they said, Brooke, we have a stack of fan mail here for you. We're having horror producer convention people calling to ask how they can get in contact with the new Scream Queen, and what your rate would be to bring you out to do an appearance or convention. And at the time, this is pre-economy crashing. So, you could be like hot in a minute at that point, and they were willing to pay you to appear places and to go all over the country. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is so surreal. Never in a million years did I expect it. And, I talk about that all the time too. Like people say, well, how did you become a Scream Queen? And I tell, I get inquiries from young actresses who love horror, and I think everyone should go after their dreams. Everyone. However, I do feel strongly about this. Like I never woke up one day and said, I'm a Scream Queen, or I'm a horror star. Like I feel that was something that after doing a couple films like the two you mentioned, just kind of, it was sort of bestowed upon me. Like, you've worked your ass off, you're in the club, you've proven yourself, and, you really are what I like to think is a sexy, powerful woman who acts in the horror genre.
What's interesting is, because I know that I've talked to previous Scream Queens who initially, when that phrase first came out, had issues with it because it often meant, back in the 80s, certainly, sometimes the exploitation of their bodies or the exploitation of what they had to do in the movies or whatever it was. But actually, they then, obviously, over time, owned it and got strength from it and found a way to sort it out. Whereas the two films, as I said, iMurders and Polycarp that we're discussing, in those films, you play strong, intelligent roles, and there isn't really an exploitation of anything or any part of you at all. It's one's a detective and one's a psychologist. They're strong, careered women roles in the films. Now, there's a slight exploitation nature towards the end of Polycarp, but nothing you do compares to necessarily what the other actresses do in the film.
You said it. That's a very, for any actresses who are listening, that's a very clear choice that I've always made in my career. Mm-hmm. I've chosen never to do nudity, and not that I wouldn't, for the right, if Scorsese called right now,
sure,
you'd have a good shot of seeing my big booty butt naked, but that will be a choice if that opportunity comes. I've lost many big opportunities in my acting career because I wouldn't, and I don't judge it. I have best friends who love their bodies, embrace their bodies, get naked. I think sometimes it's necessary in a film. I think it's fantastic and a beautiful thing, or it can be if it's written and directed properly. But for me, it was a choice I made. Yeah. I felt like if I hadn't done it in my early 20s when I was younger, why do it now? So I do think two things I just want to say in response to what you stated, because it's really important, is that number one, I think that the genre and the Scream Queen moniker has changed so much, yes, from the 80s to now, like you said. So I think that the whole Scream Queen persona has changed. I think that female empowerment has grown and women are taking a stand for these great, strong roles. I certainly do it. And the irony is, if I were to tell you the roles that I played, and a lot of them, even outside of horror, prior to these films where I am the killer, the detective, the psychiatrist, the strong woman, the kick-ass woman, the roles I played, I played more prostitutes, more, escorts, more hookers, more strippers, because that's how Hollywood wants to typecast you. And I truly believe, had I not been a producer or an executive producer on those projects, those opportunities would not have been there for me. 100%, they would have hired way bigger names and would have gotten them because they were strong female lead roles than myself in a New York minute.
I can definitely see that, but I think it's very impressive the way that you own those roles. You produce those films, you made it your own, and like I was saying off air, and I said I would say it on air. Honestly, in those two movies, although obviously, as we've said, Kinky Killers has Durning in it, and Michael Pare and a bunch of others, and iMurders even more so. There's a whole list of actors in iMurders who are would be well known to people. Gabrielle Anwar and William Forsythe and Tony Todd and people like this in that film. When you come on screen, and I was obviously waiting for you to come on screen, but even so, when you come on screen, there is a presence, there is a performance, there is a strength, there is there's something interesting and there's something dynamic about what it is you're doing that changes the film. It's not a case of this is just another put a bunch of random actors together movie. This is now where the plot is going. Because, in both movies, you don't really come in until the first, 20, 25 minutes or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But once you come in, then whatever character you're playing suddenly anchors the story. And that may be the function of you producing, but or it may be the way the scripts were written. But whatever you're doing then anchors the story. And instead of it just being... here's Brooke Lewis, and this is where we're going from here. The performance rises to meet that story need, which is what's so gripping about it, I felt. And I think the other thing is that you do there are a lot of sort of so-called people who kind of try and put themselves into that horror role, and unfortunately a lot of it can be female, where they are playing the kind of ditzy, dotty, idiotic kind of character, which can be a function of the genre. And I'm not knocking it, I'm not trying to talk down to it, but you can expect that almost sometimes. And it can be frustrating because I'm someone who loves strong female. I love Barbara Crampton as an actress. I love Pam Grier as an actress. I love Helen Mirren as an actress. I'm all about big, strong women. That's what I love in movies.
But we can't even go there with the British, Helen Mirren. Judi Dench.
Right.
Yes, I am in awe of those careers. And please, John, let me just say thank you so much for saying what you said. And I'm so flattered and moved by the fact that you said that about my presence in my work. And, ironically, and we talked about this off air, and, I don't, because I'm so grateful for the opportunities I've had. And, Robbie Bryan, who's one of my favorite directors and who's like family now, and he directed iMurders, all these years later, we both laugh. And he and Christy, his wife and producing partner, Christy Patello, took me to Sundance this year for another film with their production company. And we'll talk about it later. I'm actually about to star in another one of his films and play a very strong female lead. And we joke now, we're able to laugh at it because, it was his first big directing feature, and I was one of the executive producers, and I was one of the leads on iMurders. And we were saying, to me, I watch them and I cringe because I've grown so much as an actress. B, it is so challenging when you're producing and acting and trying to deal with other functions. I think that, and I was just learning the genre, so I felt so challenged. I look at those now and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're some of my worst acting ever.
Right.
Really, yeah. And I'm honest. I'll tell you the roles, that's one of the reasons I wanted you to watch Sprinkles. The way between the script and Roger Scheck's direction, I won Best Actress for that at several festivals. We'll talk about that later, but I look and I'm like, wow, I've grown. And so it means the world to me, and it means the world to me when I get fan mail still. I still get tons of fan mail for iMurders. I know that's floating around still, and, we're so grateful, and we're we've just come such a long way and learned so much. And it shocks me. It really, I get tons of fan mail. They're like, you're my favorite character in iMurders. You and Tony Todd are the, best part of iMurders, or you're so good in iMurders. And I'm like, oh, wow, because I don't see that.
Right. Well, we can all be hypercritical of ourselves, you know what I mean? When you say you like the podcast, I seem to think to myself, well, why? Why would you even bother listening? But so I feel exactly the same way. I know what you mean. And we can all be critical of it. And like I was saying before, the reason why those two movies stood out to me was initially they were ones I could get hold of and watch in the time frame that we have, because obviously with your your October is incredibly busy, being who you are, that I wanted to get you into the show as soon and early as possible in the month. And the other thing is because they are the two movies, it turns out, that kind of set you on this path of being a horror movie actress and sort of, and not only that, but it's a self-created path. It's one that you've chased. It's one that you've put together yourself, which is, again, something else that is incredibly commendable and fascinating and different about you compared to maybe other actresses in the genre. As I look on your IMDb of the next year and the next couple of years coming up, and I know it's not always 100% accurate, but there's horror film after horror film after horror film. You've got the Lazarus series that you're going to be working on. I know it's sci-fi, but you've got the Starship series that you're going to be continuing. You're going to be working with the guy that you made Slime City Massacre with. You're going to be working with him again on Killer Rack. So, there's horror is in your future, and that's now seems to be the road you're going down, and it all began with these two films. Am I right in saying?
Absolutely. I mean, the 4 films, and they all happened between like 2007 and 2009, and the 4 projects that really sort of created this platform in a big, a larger scale way for me. Absolutely. It was Kinky Killers, iMurders, Slime City Massacre, and Slime City Massacre being a sequel to a cult classic, which we will talk about, and then winning the B-Movie Golden Cob Award for Leading Lady Scream Queen of the Year 2010 really gave me a grand introduction into the horror universe and genre that I'm forever grateful for. And then, of course, Ms.Vampy, which we'll talk about again. I know you'll bring that up later.
Sure.
So those are the 4 that gave me just an incredible platform. But then surrounding that, look, I did, supporting roles and fantastic roles. One of my favorite roles ever that I played was a horror comedy that was Dahmer versus Gacy, directed by Ford Austin. And, I still to this day, that role, I show it to people. They're like, what and I look at that's a role I look at and I go, I kicked ass. I kicked with a Texas accent, Southern accent and all. I kicked ass as Tammy Hart, the televangelist.
Yeah.
So, and I get fan mail for that. It's so crazy. And so, that all kind of happened all around that time frame. But, and then what I choose to do as an actress, and again, I'm forever grateful for the notoriety in the horror and sci-fi genres, which came a little later, which was intentional as well. Well, sort of. But what I try to do, what I choose is for every sort of couple of horror films, I make sure that I seek out or I accept an offer or I produce or create something that's outside of horror. Like we mentioned, which you have yet to watch, which is one of my favorite films, which is also one of my biggest claim to fame, is Sinatra Club, because for many, many years in New York, like I said, I starred in a lot of mobster movies and TV pilots that failed and so on and so forth. That's a big thing I do, which created Ms.Vampy. So Sinatra Club was a big one. We shot that in 2009. It got released in 2011. That had a big DVD and VOD release, and
we will be covering it on a later episode with you outside of Horrortober. That is the plan, Brooke.
I love it, absolutely.
Yeah, no
so I just wanted to address that. I've always, and then Gerald. I worked with Mark Klebanoff. I work with Mark Klebanoff a lot, who is a wonderful young director, and we did a comedy called Gerald, a dark comedy with Louis Mandylor and Mackenzie Fergens and Deb Faker and Mickey Rooney, rest his soul. So and we'll talk about those, like we said, the next show. But my point is, I've really kept it. But the truth be told, and for Horrortober, the horror fans are the greatest fans I've ever experienced. And I've had Broadway fans when I did Broadway in New York, and I've had mobster movie fans. The horror and sci-fi fans embrace you. If they embrace you with all their open heart and soul.
Yes.
They have been so good to me. I am so blessed. And so why wouldn't I, as an actress? There are some incredible movies being made in horror. And yes, Lazarus, Day of the Living Dead that was released that Thomas Churchill directed, and I will do the sequels. It's actually, funny enough, like a mobster horror noir, like a noir zombie picture.
Oh, yeah, the trailers look incredible. I mean, the trailer I saw for that looks incredible. I mean, I really wanted to watch that, and I can get it on, I think it's on Amazon at the moment for people
correct.
listening.
Yes, it hasn't been released yet on DVD, right.
I can rent it on there, so I'll rent it on there when I can, yeah.
Yeah, so, and you'll see, and in that, and there I play such a great, mature, powerful female role that was actually, funny enough, when Thomas and I were working through it, rehearsing and making choices, he said to me, watch Judi Dench in Skyfall and pick up some of her characteristics. And I'm like, oh, bam, like that's what I want to do as an actress. So the nice thing is that I still get to be in the horror genre, work in the horror genre, but you can still choose, strong roles. You can still choose well-developed written scripts. It doesn't have to be schlocky and, gratuitous and whatever. I mean, everything serves a purpose. And I believe there's art found in everything, and everyone should have the opportunity to express it. However, for me, I choose certain things.
Sure. Of course, no, and genre movies, and there's a couple of points. Well, there's lots of points that are now whizzing around my head after that. But I mean, one of the points is that obviously, although horror it can be, and certainly older horror from the 80s and 90s can be kind of occasionally attacked by somewhat critics, as I said to Brian Trenchard Smith earlier today, who have their head up their ass, who don't see the point. It could be condemned for being a sexist genre, but actually we have the final girl. That is a thing, the strong, powerful female who actually survives at the end of the movie. And it might have started off as a boy wish fulfillment thing. In other words, like we want to see a chick kick ass because that's sexy or whatever. It could be initially a sexist boy fulfillment thing, but ultimately it became something that very Jamie Lee Curtis and Sigourney Weaver, and you've got actors like that who are doing it, who are owning those roles and making it the thing to do if you're an actress. It's not an embarrassment to do those movies. In fact, it's a badge of honor. I still think that in feminist cinema and in certainly strong female action roles and genre roles, in mainstream we've gone backwards. I think it's in the other thing I wanted to point out was that your horror roles and your films that you've been doing, what's nice about them and the things that are easy to embrace about them is that they're not what so-called quote-unquote Hollywood mainstream horror is doing, which has become, certainly in my taste, and I'm a big horror fan, but certainly in my taste, it's become very staid, very repetitive, and very obvious. It's either found footage movies, remakes, lots
Supernatural.
Of possession movies. It's always got a lot of shaky cam. It's always kind of greeny brown. Like it's the same thing over and over again. Whereas, people can say what they like about films like Kinky Killers and iMurders and things like that. They're different. They're not storylines that you're seeing being done elsewhere. They've got different characters in them, different plot drives. And, yes, of course, they've got influences and can be derivative of certain things. But really, they're doing something different in the genre that you don't see in mainstream, which is what appeals to me. That's where it gets to me. That's where I get excited by stuff, is when I'm like, okay, well, this is interesting. This is doing something with the serial killer genre in both cases that I hadn't seen before. And lastly, the interesting thing as well is you said you went out to LA, and that is that the East Coast, certainly the cities of the East Coast, don't have a long tradition of horror. There's only a few. There's the Sentinel Maniac Cop series. There's a couple of others that take place in New York, the New York Ripper and things. But there isn't a huge thing of city-based or urban horror. Candyman is another one, thinking of your co-star, Tony Todd. But
Great franchise.
the fact that oh yes, fantastic. But the fact that you went out to LA and then ended up, the two horror films you ended up booking were actually ones that are filmed in a city, and in the case of Kinky Killers in New York is
New York, both of them.
It's hilarious, yeah. So because you think of horror being either in the backwoods somewhere,
in New Orleans, or right, or North Carolina, totally.
Yeah, or in LA, or in
Bakersfield,
right, or like New Jersey, like the woods of New Jersey, or the woods of Pennsylvania, or New England. So yeah, very interesting that they're two urban horrors as well.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny. We're gonna, like, as you're speaking, I'm adding to it. Slime City Massacre,
of course.
New York,
yeah,
New York, set in New York. You know, it is interesting, and so.
And I love that, by the way. The more horror that can be set in New York. The thing I hate about New York is it's become the rom-com city, or like the TV detective city. I'd really like it to go back to being like the genre city and the edgy city. Yeah, because you see the movies of Larry Cohen, the movies of Bill Lustig, the movies of Frank Henenlotter back in the 70s and 80s, and I've been banging on about them because I interviewed James Glickenhaus earlier in the month, and he's another one of my favorite New York film directors. But yeah, we need more genre film in New York. That's what we want.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and that we could, again, you know, as we're going, because you and I are both cinema freaks and we get it, and we get filmmaking. Like, for one, I mean, and any actors listening, you know, you really do need, you need to know your type. And I'm such an East Coast New York. I'm, you know, from Philly, Jersey, New York. So
sure.
I'm such an East Coast type. And so, of course, logically, I get brought back to act and star in films in New York a lot. In fact, you know, later we'll shout out again to the next thriller that Robbie Bryan from iMurders and I are about to do. And it's in New York. And it's amazing. And I'm super excited. So it's interesting. And it's funny because, you know, again, Lazarus, Day of the Living Dead. It takes place in Hollywood, but has very much a New York tone. It's very Hitchcock-esque, you know. It's very mobster-esque. So it's really interesting what you're saying. But yeah, and the other thing leading into that too that I want to address is, like you said, I haven't acted in a lot of the, you know, horror. They're much more mystery thrillers, crime dramas, stuff like that, you know. So that is an explanation right there. Because here's the truth. And it's funny, and I'm discovering this as you're talking. Nobody is really putting me in the backwoods, not with my strong city personality and persona. Right. Nobody's putting Ms.Vampy in the woods.
No, indeed. No, yeah. And yet you could do it. You could do it no problem at all. There's nothing wrong with like a strong female character. Look at the first Wrong Turn. Isn't it Eliza Dushku who's strong in that movie and chased relentlessly throughout the movie, but
no, totally true. Listen, and I love, like, Danielle Harris is one of my all-time favorite scream queens, and
sure.
she's my height. She's badass. She's beautiful, and she's done a lot of the Hatchets and a lot of those. So absolutely, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's an area you're going to be looking at doing, or are you ever thinking of sort of putting you and Danielle Harris and people like that all in a movie together and doing something like that? Has that ever been spoken about?
Oh gosh, I mean, I would absolutely love that in a minute. I mean, to work with Danielle, to work with you know, Adrienne Barbeau, Leslie Easterbrook. I'm still yet to do a film with one of my dearest friends who's like my kindred spirit, Suze Lanier Bramlett from The Hills Have Eyes. She's like, you know, family to me.
Sure.
And we've yet to work together. So, I mean, that would be a dream for me to work with some of those, you know, veteran horror actresses.
And of course, Debbie Rochon is the other one, of course.
Well, Debbie, but I can't mention her because she and I have worked together, and we're working together in Killer Wreck, and she is just spectacular. If anyone doesn't know her, she's just real deal, authentic, through and through, you know.
Definitely.
And listen, I mean, and nobody can ever, as far as my generation goes, you know, Debbie Rochon and Tiffany Shepis, they wear the real crowns of the real deal scream queens who have been in it for the long haul, committed, you know, for many, many, many years. You know, I mean, so when I don't mention them, I kind of, you know, I look at, I guess for me, because I do a lot of mainstream stuff as well, you know, it's a little bit of a different game.
Yeah.
But, oh, yeah, please. I mean, they should be honored, and I revere them. I mean, those two are the, like, scream queens of our generation for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. And they've done such a nice wide breadth of work that, I urge everyone who's listening to kind of delve into all you guys' work and to like figure out what's going on and what movies are out there, because, I do. One of the things I find is I do get sick of sort of hearing people bang on about the genre not being able to find anything they like, or not being able to find, the movies that are being made not being the ones that they want. And you just have to pick that scab off and go under the surface. You know what I mean? And there's a whole fucking world of stuff being made.
You need to really, unfortunately now, and I'm not going to start voicing my whole opinion about how much cinema has changed in general, but since the economy crashed, since the internet hype, we all know this. Now, and listen, distributors will tell you. You can take a meeting with any distribution company; they'll tell you the same thing. It's so oversaturated, the horror genre. And listen, that's a positive and a negative. The positive is, or let me start with the negative. The negative is that anyone can run out and make a $10,000 feature film, and the positive is anyone can run out and make a $10,000 feature genre film.
Yeah.
So it makes it that much more challenging for, I feel like, seasoned filmmakers to be able to do that anymore, because for many reasons, as a producer, and that's why I don't produce. To answer your question a couple questions ago, I'd love to produce a film for all of those actresses to star in, but I would never do it at this point. I will not produce indie films because you cannot, nowadays you can't take a $50,000 producer fee and live. You can't. So I don't know how young filmmakers are doing it, making $10,000, $20,000 feature films. God bless them. But that wouldn't be my bag. I have zero interest in that. So for me, I'll focus as a producer on my Ms.Vampy series and all that good stuff. So, it's tough now because, and I understand the frustration of the audience and the horror fans, because they do need to sift through a lot of garbage.
Well, that's the big problem is that, that's definitely you're saying, the problem with getting it made is that there's so much out there. Well, the problem being a fan is that unless you're like us and you're active on Twitter and you have an in and you figure stuff out, and I'm very, very, very fortunate to know lots of just incredibly knowledgeable horror podcasters and horror writers who have, who I owe a huge debt to because they've pointed me in the right direction. I can't claim any originality myself. That you need a whole backup system like that just to be able to go, okay, well, these are the things I should be looking at. That's the problem as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm glad that it leads to people like yourself, Brooke. That's what I'm most happy about. So you mentioned it there, the Ms.Vampy series, and it's a fantastic idea. It's this, just to quickly explain it. Well, I'll tell you what, you go ahead and explain the character. Tell everyone what it is and where they can find it.
It's such a long story, but to try to make it brief, Ms.Vampy was born, I gained this mini attention, whatever you want to call it, notoriety in the horror genre as a scream queen. And I was getting tons and tons of offers, direct offers for films. And I wasn't loving a lot of the scripts. I wasn't getting fully inspired. And I'd been doing back in like 2008, some vampire modeling. And, which was very well received. And I had a marketing company who contacted me and blah, blah. It's too long of a story, but they wanted me. It was before any of the apps were hot. It was before web series were even hot, like beginning of 2008. And they said, we want you to be like Brooke Lewis, vampire goddess. Of course, they wanted me, my production company, Philly Chick Pictures, to finance for like $100,000 a series of webisodes that Apple would own 40% of off the top, and then this and the blah, blah. And I was like, I didn't fall off the turnip truck. Like, I'm a smart cookie. I'm a producer. Not going to happen. But I loved the idea. And when I get a good intuitive feeling about something, I have to follow it. So my partners at the time and I sat down and we were like, okay, I said, they're on to something. There's no proven track record yet with the internet, with web series. There might not be for a long time, or the apps. But and at the time I was doing well financially, and I'm like, you know what? Let's take a chance. And I am either like, I'm interested in this, but if I'm going to create a character, I'm not going to be Brooke Lewis, vampire goddess. They have a million way hotter, younger, half naked girls or naked girls who'd be down for that. That's not my bag. It has to be the essence of me. And I looked at the body of my biggest work, which at the time had been comedy, mobster movies, and now horror. And everyone used to say to me, "You're so vampy, you're so vampy, you're such a vamp, you're such a vamp." And I'm like, and I used to joke with the fangs in doing the modeling shoots and say, and do my Brooklyn mobster girl and be like, "Oh my God." And then I woke up, I was like, "I am Ms.Vampy." And everyone just died laughing. And I'm like, "No, I really am." And she was born just like that. And it was perfect, and it felt perfect, and I knew I was onto something. And long story short, I decided to be very careful, and of course, with the huge inspiration of Elvira, since I was a little girl. And I went, I'm going to make her sort of like, I'm going to combine it with my sketch comedy, with pop culture, and do like dating stuff, and vampirematch.com, and the vampire is just not that into you, and all that fun stuff. And then, and I knew that would get people's attention, and then bring some indie horror stars on to play with me on the show. And that's what we did. I mean, it was a nice budget that we spent for the very first web series. And I was terrified. I'm like, okay, I've now sort of established myself in the horror genre just a bit at the time. People are loving me for Kinky Killers and iMurders, like you said. And, they're taking me in very serious lead roles. Either I am going to piss my fans off, or they're going to fall in love with it. There is no middle ground here. And it was scary. And we did everything, and I hired professionals like crazy, and we did a press release. And I knew when we were launching, we built the website, and when we were launching, I remember it like it was yesterday, and it was beginning of 2009. It was over. It was like almost 6 years. Oh my gosh, almost 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And wow. And I sat there that Friday shaking at home, and I went, okay, the launch is out. We sent it to every, horror and mainstream, like indie film site that I had any contacts to. And I said, I'm either it's do or die. And within 1 hour of launching the first webisode, we were covered by 17 horror sites, like saying, this is the new Elvira. She's the new Stella. The East Coast sites were calling her Stella because there was Stella when I was little that was hosting like horror movies. It was crazy train fan mail. I'm like, thank you, God, higher power, whatever you believe in. Like, wow, I knew I was onto something. And it just sort of took on a life of its own. And I mean, literally, and again, that was my heyday before the economy crashed. 2009, beginning of 2010 even, I was getting flown out. I had to get a booking agent and getting flown out to do the cons and appearances and host events as Ms.Vampy, and paid well, and everybody wanted a piece of Ms.Vampy. And I think it's because, for one, I think it was because it was so unique of a concept. And for two, here's the real truth. And again, to anyone who's listening who wants to be inspired to do something unique and creative, it is my truth. It was the genres that I loved, that I had excelled and succeeded in, that was authentic and true to my heart and soul. Comedy, mobster movies, now horror. And it was me. She's me. She is my alter ego, but she is the me. She is my mouthpiece. She's the person who is not afraid, the vampire, who's not afraid to speak her mind, but comes from love at all times. But she says things I would never say to people, Ms.Vampy. She's badass. And she's sort of like, she really, truly is my alter ego. She's like the person I wish I could be. She's the fearless vampiress and courageous being, or undead being that I want to be.
And is it a great improvised role, or do you write a lot of the lines? Are you aware of sort of what you're going to be doing for that episode, or is a lot of it
just... That is such a great question. Great question. I always timeline everything. It is absolutely improv. If I had not had improv classes as an actress when I was young in New York, if I had not done Tony and Tina's Wedding, which was half scripted, half improv, for 3 years, 7 shows a week, I would not be able to do this. Right. She is completely, what I do is every webisode, I know my content, I study it, I rehearse it, I timeline it, I cue card it, I write it. I mean, not cue card it, but like I'll do, 3x5 cards. And my directors all know who've worked with me. A big shout out to Stacey Lane Wilson. She just directed, and Matt Raub, who produced, which I'm forever grateful for, the last series, which was the Ms.Vampy's Love Bites.
Yes.
And it all kind of, has taken an incredible shape and transformation from my Ms. Vampy's tween talk, teen talk, and in-between talk, which was positive messages for teens, and then we wanted to bring her back to adults, but I wanted to stay positive and be kind of like a love coach and just sort of incorporate and encompass all of Brooke Lewis. And so, like, Stacey Lane Wilson is the best one to tell you because she directed also my Be You and Be Fearless Life Coach series. And so she and I work so well together, and she's one of my best friends, and she's amazing and talented. And so a big thank you to her because I don't always get to mention, a lot of the people I work with. So, and she and I work so well together because she knows exactly what I'm about to do. And she knows that I'm going to have everything set in my mind of the topic and talking points that I need to cover, but the rest is improv. Yeah. So you've got to know when you're directing me, when you're filming me as well, that things could take sort of a different pace and direction, but I need to be kept on point, kept on pace. And, but yeah, a lot of it is just complete impulse in the moment, blah. And that is not, as you know, easy to do.
No, it's not. What I was going to say was that it did strike me in a very positive way that of those characters that, and I can never tell when I'm about to get into one, and actors and actresses can't always tell when they're about to get into one, but you can sometimes nail down a character that it's just easy to improv in. I think it's Kevin Pollak says that when he does Albert Brooks, when he imitates Albert Brooks, he's funnier as Albert Brooks than he is as Kevin Pollak because he's improving as Albert Brooks, as a character. And I've been in those situations where I've done improv where if I've got an accent and I've got a certain costume or whatever, you can really just go off and you know what that character's going to say if it's an archetype or something that you can latch onto. And that's what struck me about Ms.Vampy is that it seemed to have, this is someone you know. This is someone like you, meaning you, Brooke, someone you have come in contact with or someone you have observed or, obviously mixed with cliche and mixed with stereotype, mixed with stuff that is pleasing and in general is what people are looking for. But at the same time, it feels real, you know what I mean? And it feels like you're genuinely inhabiting this character. And if I watched some of the ones which you did with the kids because I was like, okay, well, how is this going to be? Because kids can get giggly and kids can get silly and kids can sort of be like, well, what am I doing here? And why is she doing this silly voice and whatever? But the fact that you were straight with the kids, you held it together with the kids, and yes, there's the puns and there's the jokes that go along with being a horror host or being a character like that. The fact that you were engaging with them about real issues and the fact that you were talking about real issues while also being this, it's not a flamboyant character, but it's it's clearly
she's totally over the top, totally over the top.
But it's not a. What I mean by that is it's not a. I can find flamboyance a bit grating on occasions. It's not a. It's not a grating character. It's one of those improv characters that you can you can empathize with, you can sympathize with, you can have something in common with, you can embrace. You know what I mean? Like it's one of it. Yeah, it's just a really, really good character. That's what I'm trying to get down to.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and again, thank you. And again, it comes back to always being within my truth. That's why, again, to listeners, if you're creating art of any kind, and it doesn't have to be just acting, I say commit to your truth. And like you said, yeah, as you see, even in serious moments when I'm talking about, whether it be with the tween talk girls, about bullying or self-esteem or body image, or, Ms. Vampy's love bites or Ms. Vampy's bites when we gave advice about, to the LGBT community or about texting or about online dating, I'm always speaking from my truth. So yes, first of all, John, I just want to say, you're so wise and so perceptive, and your attention to all of this is, and I do a lot of interviews, I have to give you props, is tremendous. And I know that's because you do all genres and everything, you watch everything. You've nailed so many things, and that is exactly accurate. She's a caricature, but I'm not, like you said, like being flamboyant in the sense that I'm saying things that I think this character would say. I'm saying it the way I believe she authentically would say it, and using language that Brooke Lewis would never use. But it is all coming from a very truthful place for me as a person and as an actress, and Ms.Vampy as a character I created. And you're right. Like, I remember when we came and we had major auditions to cast that teen cast, the tween and teen cast.
Yeah.
I mean, I hired, God bless Allison Buck, my manager and casting director. We hired her and she killed it. I mean, and it was true. The girls would come in and say, and some of the parents too, would say, we were so confused by the breakdown of this audition, because we're like, wait a minute, a talk show about serious topics for teen girls with a vampire? And then once they saw, and once I improv with them in character, they were like, we totally get it. Now it makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Because she's a lovable character. She's not a character. It could so easily be like Vampire Snooki or something horrible like that you would just not. Right. And I only mean that by, a pop culture reference to cut to the chase. I don't mean that it comes across like that. I'm just saying it could so easily have been something like that, something trampy, trashy, where all the jokes are kind of innuendo and you're not interested anymore. And it's not that at all. It's not that. And, and I'm a 34-year-old guy, what interest do I necessarily have in, girl teen problems? But what I purposely did was I watched like one or two of each of the series that you did, because I wanted to see the different dynamic that you had as the character in the different setups and with the different questions. And obviously something like the teen thing is interesting because it's such an unusual setup, but it worked so well, and it came across something that was strong and positive, and like I say, wasn't annoying, and you weren't giving them, bad ideas, or you weren't giving them sort of trashy nonsense. It was genuine, and it was something. It genuinely felt like a woman talking to a girl, saying, "This is what you're going to go through. This is what you're going to have to deal with. This is how I dealt with it." Like it was. Yeah, it's inspiring. It's awesome like that.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you feel that way. And I've gotten that feedback from men, like dads. I've gotten emails from, thank you for creating that. I made my teen daughter watch it. And it's like, wow. Yes, everyone kind of gets it, which is cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I think it's a really interesting series to do. And are you going to do any future series with different audiences again, or anyone in the series again, or bringing people into the series again, or will you continue just being yourself out?
It's so I can't even answer that, and I'll tell you why. The two reasons why I keep kind of every couple of 2 years bringing her back is I could do network television and nobody gives a shit, and the minute anybody, fan mail, this, that, interviews, everybody wants to know, where's Ms.Vampy, which is why I know in my heart that she's still well and alive and something big's going to happen with her. Number two, the reason I bring her back again on and off is when we get offers for development deals with some television stuff that we've created that's really been in the works for quite a few years, like our Vamp It Out movie of the week, like a high school musical. And we've got a team right now that's extraordinary with potential for a TV series. So when we get challenged with that, because I'm kind of like this little badass, you tell me no, and I'll prove to you why I can.
Yeah,
and
of course.
So so in Hollywood that happens every day. So we take these meetings with major companies, and they tell us all the reasons it's not going to work. And then I go, really? I'll show you. But, you have to be careful with that too, because I'll show you turns into $10,000 per web series, out of my production company pocket, which is my personal pocket sometimes. And then you have to be really careful. So, I do that when I need to film something to show, a big network or development company or something like that. So you never know, but I can tell you that Vamp It Out is still in development. It's being redeveloped. We keep trying to bring it up to the times, and that's a movie for teens and family, like a family Halloween special with rock music and the formula and love and following your dreams and all of it. It encompasses everything that I want to be a stand for as a person, actress, woman in Hollywood, all of it.
Yeah. And that's what I think really comes across, but it really does come across from everything from talking about the first movies where you got into horror and you owned your persona right through to today when you're still doing the same thing, that each time you're going out, it's knocking down yet another preconceived stigma that is bullshit anyway, that someone somewhere came up with 20 years ago and doesn't know what they're talking about most of the time. But each time you're going out there and you're knocking down those stigmas, and that's also really great. Because I think the other thing is the horror community, or certainly the horror community I hang out with and I talk to, or just the film community in general, is that we're not any of those. We're not racist, we're not sexist, we're not misogynistic, we're not these people who give a shit about any of that. In fact, we want to see quite the opposite. We want to see strong female roles and strong African-American roles and strong gay roles, or whatever it is. Like, we're excited by that. It interests us. It's different. It's
that's the indie film community versus Hollywood, and Hollywood likes to put you in a box, and that's, listen, again, had I not produced all this stuff, other than Ms.Vampy, but, iMurders, Kinky Killers, probably the movie The Eyes that Robbie Bryan and I are about to do, which is an unbelievable, ensemble piece thriller, and I'm playing the female lead, and she's a tough attorney, and so, of course, Hollywood would poo-poo all that, even a great example is with iMurders. I'll bring it up. People were concerned, the height difference. First of all, is Brooke going to be believable? She's sexy, voluptuous. She's 5 feet tall. She's going to be believable being a detective. Well, guess what? Some of my best friends back home are 5 feet tall, voluptuous detectives.
Sure.
For real. Badass Philly. My girlfriend Nicole in Atlanta. They're badass little detectives. Number 2, then the concern was, but would it be believable that she would be partners? She and Tony Todd as Agent Romano in Washington would be detective partners because he's 6'5" and she's 5 feet tall and he's huge and she's little. And it was making me crazy. It was maybe I don't look right. And then it was and then do you know how much fan mail I got that was and iMurders got in general that was oh my God, that was the greatest pairing. Tony Todd's character, Washington, became a protector alongside a partner. And if you watch crime dramas on TV, all the Law and Orders, blah, blah, that's what happens. Yeah. It's real, and you become that type of partnership. So it's I feel really, you want to tell us we can't do it? Watch, you're wrong.
It never even came up in my head watching the movie. It never appeared silly. It never appeared. You never looked at it and went, "Oh my goodness, look at the height difference." It never even came up. Never even entered my head. It was just I was watching it trying to figure out who the killer was. Like everyone, you're meant to be when you're watching that movie. You know what I mean? But
yeah, and I really it's those types of role just to address that, and we can cross over for one moment because sci-fi sort of, is a horror branch off, whatever. But
talk about what from this moment, talk about whatever you want to, yeah.
Right, one of my, because I have so many wonderful films that either just released or are releasing, and I am so in love with the sci-fi genre right now. And Neil Johnson, who's a British director, has just created so many amazing opportunities for me, and I'm so excited. I'm going to get to keep working with him. And Starship Rising is one that I'm really proud of that just released in September. And when he came to me, he actually I was one of the first people attached to the project. He had told me to look at the three of the female leads. And, one was that Raja Barudi ended up playing, and she's a British actress, and she killed it. She was totally amazing. She's so talented. That was a role he told me to look at. She was the head empress, Yeah. And as much as it spoke to me and I was I could do this, this Staris character, who's the young fighter pilot, and I won't give too much away because in the sequel, Starship the Apocalypse, I'm not going to say too much, but she well, obviously everyone knows I'm in there. She sort of comes back as more of a pilot. So she's like a commander. But in the, part 1, Rising, she's the badass little fighter pilot who flies the starship, who, oh my God, talk about a strong, powerful, mouthy role, kind of along the lines of something Michelle Rodriguez would play.
Sure. It's a great example. Yeah.
Right. And when I read that role, and even though she's the 3rd female lead, Neil said to me, I said, who do you as my director see me playing? And he said, if I had to pick, not based on, lead, supporting lead, I would say Staris, you will kill that. I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Can I be that bad at? Like, and he's like, Brooke, come on, it's you. And this role, I read it and it spoke to me, and it was something I had never done before. It was something that would be challenging for me. It was something that she was tough but yet had layers of different emotions and sides to the character. I had to learn, literally, E.J. De La Pena from Jingle All the Way, Leave It to Beaver, we played sidekicks in the film. He was the other little fighter pilot. Like, he had to teach me on my very first day on set, like, take 2 hours and, like, show me how to technically, because they're such sci-fi gurus, these guys, how to fly the ship. And make it look, because I'm a real actress. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm not messing around. Somebody needs to direct me and tell me, teach me, give me a technical lesson. Like, I want this to look authentic and real and legit. I don't want viewers watching it and going like, she doesn't know what the hell she's doing,
Right.
So, I mean, and it was tremendous, and what a cool experience. And I also learned that, a spaceship movie like that, when you're doing that, it's very. And one of our leads, who I adore, Darren Jacobs, who's the lead, and he's a British actor. He was in Hollyoaks. Like, he said to me, Brooke, think Shakespeare. And these actors were so talented in this project. And, like, it's true. It's like a whole different world, a whole new genre for me. And I had to learn, and it is very, the tone is different. The way, the loudness, the sound of which you're speaking, yelling, because you have to remember that stuff is going on at all times with the explosions and the ships and I'm like, oh my goodness, it was unbelievable. And I'm so excited. And I can honestly say, like, I am proud of my work in that film. I'm really excited about this one.
So the ones that people should be looking out for right now, Starship Rising, Lazarus, Day of the Living Dead. They should definitely check out your Ms.Vampy web series, obviously, which is still up on the website.
Yeah, MsVampy.net. Also, shout out to The Morning, which is a drama with a little bit of a paranormal twist. That is one I am beyond proud of. My director, again, Mark Klebanoff.
Is that out already? Is that available?
It is not released yet. It will be out, we hope, in January. They just did a huge distribution deal for it.
Nice. Okay.
Oh, my gosh. It stars Michael Walton, Louis Mandylor, Dominique Swain, Larry Henkin from Home Alone. Just an unbelievable cast. And Kinga Phillips, Sally McDonald. Just unbelievable. A film that is a labor of love. We went back 2 years ago now, October, and shot for the month of October in Michigan. And we all took pay cuts, and it is just a beautiful, heartfelt film. Now, again, I play a supporting role, and I play a total little sex pot, but she's got layers, and I'm not going to give it away, but she's part of the sort of paranormal transformation, and it's just an incredible film I'm so proud of. And then Starship Apocalypse Part 2 will release, I believe, December or January of this year, December or January of 2015.
Yeah.
And then just so much is going on. Robbie, again, I keep shouting out to the Eyes. I'm going to go shoot that back in New York for the month of December. So excited. And
you're coming to my hometown.
I am. I will be in New York for December.
Nice.
So we'll hook up. We'll hang out. You'll come to set. And
I mean, honestly, Brooke, I wasn't angling for that. I was just happy that people come and still make movies in New York. But honestly, like, if you want me to come down to set and do a set report or something, that would be amazing. I'd love that.
Oh, we would be honored. I can't wait to see all my East Coast peeps. We would be honored. So we'll definitely, of course, we're going to stay in touch. We always are in touch. And
sure,
we'll set that up. And then, and funny, speaking of which, and again, fingers crossed, I went through one of the most challenging auditions, keeping in the theme of horror, one of the most challenging auditions of my life. Or not, since in many, many years, from when I used to screen test for television when I was in my 20s. And there's a film titled The Catalyst that Alan Fine wrote and is directing back in New York. So I will be back at some point in the spring, and I am playing not just the female lead, the lead. She is a young New York mom who has been through hell, who has lost a child, a daughter, and she and her husband, to try to get past it, they have another baby, they have another daughter, and they need to, the husband wants to change it up, and they move into a new house, and it's very quote unquote insidious, The Conjuring style, that supernatural paranormal we talk about, but with a very good script, with a twist. And it's a beautiful film, and I am playing the lead, and I jumped through hoops. Yes, Alan, you made me jump through hoops. And the offices at Paramount. It's the micro-budget division with Robert Evans' production company. Henri Kessler is one of the executive producers.
Wow.
And Scott Kaufman, our New York management team, is one of the producers. And Allison Buck, my management team in Hollywood, is one of the producers. So just an extraordinary film role. It will shoot in Nyack, New York, like I said, in the spring. So I will be, I feel like I'm going to be really bi-coastal the next year. And I went through, oh my gosh, I mean, they had me go through so many Skype auditions, and I had to learn 8 intense scenes, and I got it. I nailed it, and I felt so good, and I feel good about it. And I feel like, I mean, again, a strong female lead role with a great story, and nothing gratuitous about this one either. And I'm just, I'm getting excited because
Nice.
I'm doing what I love. It's great. And I don't have to produce any of these, which is even better.
Right. You could just focus on the performance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's always the goal. That's always the pleasure. Well, look, that sounds fantastic. Sounds like you've got a great run of films coming up that I'm definitely going to be all over, and hopefully my listeners will be as well. That's the hope of doing stuff like this, that the people listening will also go out and discover Brooke Lewis for themselves. But thanks ever so much for your time today, Brooke. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
I appreciate you having me. This has been amazing. We've been trying to do this, and I'm so excited we nailed it down before I travel. And if I may, John, just a quick shout out to Maddie, the editor of Talent Monthly magazine.
Yes.
Which, please, all the listeners, check out the cover. I landed the cover. I'm a vampire cover girl for October.
I can't believe I forgot. I was going to congratulate you to that. I was looking at my email today, and you sent me through the email, and I was like, okay, I've got to report that on the website. And then I was going to say, remember to congratulate Brooke, remember, and I just forgot. But no, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. And also remember, too, and you were involved in the tweet, Ministers of Good Taste, the website, they voted me one of their top 10 favorite scream queens of all time, which is just beyond an honor. And so this has been a great month so far. And we're, first week into it? Amazing.
Yes. Yeah,
Yay.
It's been fantastic, and it's incredibly busy, and it's going to continue to be. I just found out recently that Diabolique Horror Magazine wants me to do, I think, a twice-a-month show for them.
That's fantastic.
So I'm going to be doing a podcast for Diabolique. I mean, we'll see how it goes. I don't quite know. They've left it all up to me. I've got to put together now a horror show for Diabolique, which I think is going to initially be quite indie. I'm going to speak to I've got a director called Craig Everett Earl, who's a friend of mine on Facebook, and he's doing a sequel to a movie that just got picked up that was a sort of favorite indie film, horror film. And then I've also got a couple of guys who wrote a horror movie book that are going to be coming on to talk about that. But I don't know. So we'll see how that goes, Brooke. But if I can get any set visits or any interviews with you and stuff, and we can get it into Diabolique, I'll see what I can do. But
I would be so thrilled. Tell them that, because I am a fan of theirs. They're very prestigious, and congratulations to you for that opportunity.
Yes.
That's awesome. And one last shout out, if I may, too, because I know you've got New York listeners. Buffalo and Greg Lamberson and the posse from Killer Rack. I am a Hollywood Scream Queen celebrity guest at 98.5 radio station KISS. They're bringing me out for their big Halloween bash, October 24th. So check out their website, it's KISS 98.5. And I'm super excited. So if there are any listeners up in the upstate New York area, come hang with me for Halloween on the 24th.
Nice. Excellent. And was there anything else you wanted to pimp, say where people can find you online and all that good stuff?
Yeah. Check out Ms.Vampy.net. Check out BrookeLewis.com is my press site that gives all the latest updates. I am forever tweeting. I will tweet you back at Brooke Lewis LA on Twitter. Facebook fan page is, I check it, but I don't do it, is the official Brooke Lewis fan page on Facebook. And what else? That's it, right? That's all that's important. That's it.
That's all. I think that's all I'm following and looking at. But yes, it's been a real pleasure, Brooke. Thanks ever so much. Let's do it again and soon. And you take care. Have a great evening tonight with your girlfriends, and best of luck with all your productions in the future.
Thank you for having me. Thank you to the After Movie Diner, and you are awesome, John. You're so knowledgeable. stay super professional as you are and keep watching movies.
Thank you. And tell all your friends about the show all the time.
I'll be saying it like crazy. You know it. You know me.
No, I know, love, I know. All right, take care of yourself and we'll speak again.
Thanks, doll. Have a great one.
Bye now.
Bye.
There are men, and then there are second unit podcast men. The podcast you've just been listening to is part of the Second Unit Podcast Network. Find all of our shows at 2upn.blogspot.com or on Facebook under the Second Unit Podcast Network. Our fantastic list of shows include Drunk on VHS, We Came from the Basement, No Budget Nightmares, The After Movie Diner, Dr. Action and the Kick-Ass Kid, and Bloodbaths and Boomsticks. Take one podcast into the shower. Don't be a blithering idiot, Alan. We can give you the multiple podcast cleansing system all in one place that your hair deserves. Our programming is available across all platforms from iTunes to Podomatic, TalkShoe to Stitcher, so you have absolutely no excuse. Listen today, and a free naked person of your choice will be shipped from Thailand to your door in a matter of weeks. The Second Unit Podcast Network, bringing you the action and leaving the boring stuff to the other guys. Bloody hell, who does a girl have to blow around here to get a decent beverage?